Hello, and welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Rare Mama podcast. I know I've been a little bit absent because life be fucking lifing sometimes, and that's just the way it goes. So I've been pretty busy considering my children are out of school and we're doing summer activities and just lifing and business and work just has me really busy. We're like right in the middle of trauma season. So, any of you healthcare workers know what that means? Yes, trauma season is in full effect, considering how warm it is and that the July 4th holiday is now past us. So, yeah, and that's one of the most dangerous holidays in the entire year. Okay. So, little housekeeping. If anybody is interested, any of you listeners are interested in coming onto the show, I would love to chat, just kind of, get some conversations going and just pick your brain a little bit, especially, topics around parenting, co parenting, divorce, relationships, special needs parenting. I love to talk about all those things because those are all topics that are very near, dear into my heart. And I know I've gone through the experience and would love others' feedback on top of that. Make sure you listen to the episode before this. I had an excellent guest, Sean Hudson, who is a special needs single dad who is divorced. We had an awesome conversation about all those topics and how he navigates parenting, work, and just relationships and just being a dad in general and fatherhood. So, excellent episode. Make sure you check that out. I will link it in the show notes if you haven't checked it out. So, as always, I appreciate emails as well. So, I would love to hear your story. So, check out the show notes. So, you can email me your story. You can stay anonymous at email at thecoparentingmama.com. And I will do a special segment when I get a ton of emails, and I will just read emails on this podcast episode because I love emails. I love stories and I love to tell stories. So let's dive into today's episode. Today's episode, I do have a listener email that I am going to read. I am going to keep it anonymous. Little disclaimer before I read this email. I am not a physician. I am not a medical professional. I am a healthcare worker. I am a healthcare professional. However, my expertise resides in radiology, CAT scan. That is the scope of my practice. So anything that I share in this episode regarding any answers to this listener's emails is based on my expertise and my own knowledge. So these opinions are my own and nobody else's. So as far as medical advice, I would highly advise you to seek your medical professional as far as medical advice or anything medical to that extent. Okay. So everything that I'm going to answer in this email is just based on my own experience and my own expertise and my opinions. So, little disclaimer there. So, this listener email that I do have comes from a couple, not in the United States. This is a couple that is in a different country. I want to keep it anonymous, so I'm not going to state what country. So they are fairly young. It is a couple. So they had said, hello, me and my partner slash girlfriend slash fiance, soon to be wife, need your assistance, advice, help, tips, tricks, tools, ideas, opinions, feedback, suggestions on them expecting their first child. And they are soon to be married later this year. So basically, they're wanting to know what's the best way to play with, engage, bond, love, interact. During her pregnancy, which I believe that they've already had their child, and all that entails. So let me kind of stress on that. Okay. If you are going to have another child, the best way is the best way that I think that helped me is I read a lot of books at that time. Um, because at that time when I had my first child, there wasn't a lot of videos. I know now you could probably go on YouTube and it's more of an educational source and see how you can interact with your child while they're in the womb. Like I said, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just stating my own opinion. So I know what I did is I read a lot of books. We would play music, with the headphones. I know I had dogs at the time. My dogs were constantly laying on my belly because they were very protective of the kids. And so those are some things that you can interact as far as when the child is in the womb. Now, I'm going to assume you've already had your child, so I'm going to just continue with this email. Now, as far as any good baby books, child books that we could both consider looking into, so that way one of us or both of us can read to our child whenever she wants one of us to read during bedtime routines at nighttime while we were getting her ready for bed, changed into her pajamas. So basically geared to 1 to 12 months or 1 to 12 years. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. So what I can suggest is that you can go to the bookstore or you can even look on Amazon and search for those age groups as far as like a month to like 3 months, 3 to 6 months. And it will give you different types of books as far as what is good for that age range. Now, I am not an expert on this, and I'll tell you why. Because I am a special needs mom, and I have one child that is has a hearing loss. So when it came to books, she just liked to flip the books a lot and not really listen to me reading because she has a hearing loss. She does wear hearing aids, however, she cannot really comprehend, and plus she's nonverbal. Now, my other daughter, we got her I got her like books that are tailored to her age. So she is actually 9 years old and she can read because she does have autism, she can actually read at a third grade level, pretty much. So that's what I would suggest as far as that. Either you go to your local bookstore or go on Amazon. Amazon is great. And you can do a search in the search bar as far as age groups for that. And it'll give you like the best, and you can look at the reviews as far as those books. So continuing with the email, any good baby child TV shows, channels, programs, cartoons, Disney Plus content that she could watch, or ones that we could both watch together with her as a family. So the few that come to mind is Miss Rachel, because I do have a child with a hearing loss. Miss Rachel is very good. And I know my sister with her children, she does Miss Rachel. I absolutely love Miss Rachel. The second program that I can recommend to you is if you go on YouTube, there is Jack Hartman with an H, and you can look him up. I know both of my children, they do educational stuff like circle time with those videos in their classrooms because they go to a special education school. So Jack Hartman is another one that is really, really, really good. The other one, and it applies to everybody, you do not have to be deaf or hard of hearing, is Signing Time. You can actually find that on YouTube as well, and you can actually watch those programs together. Now, as far as Disney Plus, that's kind of a hit or miss because there are some things that are really good, but I believe your child would have to be a little bit older to do that. So the ones that I can recommend is Miss Rachel, Signing Time, and Jack Hartman. Those are really good, and my kids absolutely love them. Another one that I think is really good is if you are able to get the PBS app. So if you have any streaming devices, PBS is a it's free. It's really good educational content. You can watch it as a family. My girls absolutely love it because they go through the ABCs. There's Sesame Street. There was an episode on Sesame Street as far as a little girl who had autism, and it was a really great episode for them to relate to. So those are my suggestions and recommendations on that. Now, as far as continuing your email, recommend suggest any good baby child bonding playtime activities we could do together with her. Um, Anytime you're interacting, how to incorporate things. So the playtime activities that I can suggest to you is it depends on their age. When they're babies, you really can't. When you're able to, tummy time is a really good one. So, and then having all the toys like in front of them, or when they're laying down, they have the toys above them. That's a really good activity. You know, bouncing chairs, those are really good as well. Any light up toys that teaches you the ABCs, those are really good because my girls learn with those. As they start to become older, I know one of my daughters loves to bake. And the reason is that's like something that's passed down in my family. My mother was a baker when I was a kid and she loved to bake. She no longer does it anymore. And I know I love to bake because that got passed down to me. And now my youngest daughter loves to bake. So that is an activity. She's a little bit older. That's an activity that we could do together. Now, as far as your child, there's many things that you can do, whether it's, coloring, whether it's painting, it's drawing, Play-Doh, Legos, it doesn't matter. Kids love any type of stimuli when it comes to those activities, or like splash pads, things of that nature. Those are things that you can do as they get older. And then to continue your email, so as far as, toys, now toys are usually by age. So if you go to Target, you go to Walmart or whatever store you shop at, um, you can actually look at toys. I can't really recommend anything specific because it's different for everybody. And there's a lot of light up toys, a lot of squishy toys. Those are good for their cognitive skills and for their occupational skills. So they know, oh, well, this lights up and says, hi, or, whatever the case may be. So as far as, interacting with your child to make them happy, it really depends on every child. Okay. So it really depends. Now, I know some of the questions that you asked here, I really can't speak on because as a parent, you have to figure that out. Because I can give you some general ideas and some recommendations, but when you're interacting and you're actually going through, the process of parenting your child, that's how you learn. And that's how you pick up a lot of these things that your child may or may not like. Because I can recommend something that might have worked for my kids. However, it might not work for your child. Okay. Because my children are a little bit different. They are not neurotypical kids, they are neurodivergent kids. Okay. So any type of playtime and engaging in activities with them is always really good. Okay. Now, continuing your email, any recommendations, suggestions, we both can consider nurseries, daycare, childcare, preschools to go to attend so we can start off early. Okay. Now, that is a personal choice. Now, I can tell you my kids never went to daycare. Why? Because my ex-husband and I figured that part out, especially when the kids were younger. And because they're special needs kids, it's a little bit more complicated. Okay. Now, what I would suggest as far as daycares, that is a personal choice. Now, let's say if you and your wife both work, then that is a discussion that you need to have together if that works for you. Okay. Or if you want to invest in personal childcare, you have to make sure that you interview these candidates and vet them, background check them very thoroughly, and make sure that they are a good fit for your family. Okay. Now, as far as preschools, I know my girls started preschool at 3 years old because they were in a like early start, head start program because they're special needs kids. There are preschools out there, but you have to search within your district or your area to figure out which is the best preschool for them to attend. And to Honestly, it's okay because a lot of parents utilize daycare, a lot of parents utilize preschool because hey, we have to work, we have to do things, right? So I think those are all personal choices. You and your wife need to discuss that. That's a discussion that you both need to have. Now, as far as baby foods, I know I started my children on baby foods at probably, I want to say at like 5, 6 months old. You can start kind of giving them very soft foods and make sure you check with your healthcare provider, the pediatrician to make sure it's safe. Like I said, I am not a physician. I'm just giving you what has worked for me. Okay. So, as far as bottles, now I can tell you from my personal experience because every child is different. Both of my kids left the pacifier and left the bottle very early. Like I think at 6 months, we were done. And my 12-year-old daughter, she doesn't take anything by mouth because she is strictly tube fed. But my youngest daughter at 6 months old, there was no more bottle. She was drinking out of a cup. So it was a very good transition and it was like the easiest one because at 4 months old, she left the pacifier as well. Okay. But that's all on personal preference. You can get your pediatrician involved to see when is the right time to transition. Okay. Now, as far as diastasis recti, yes, that can occur in pregnancy. Okay. And sometimes it can occur in babies. However, like I said, you need to follow up with your healthcare provider, like your wife and your pediatrician on that question. I cannot answer that question for you because legally I am not a physician. I am a CAT scan technologist and I can't speak on that because that's outside of my scope. So that's what I recommend that you ask them those questions. Okay. Please do not Google that. Just go to your healthcare provider, go to your pediatrician, and ask them those proper questions. And they should be able to guide you on what to do and the proper steps. Okay. So I don't think that's a huge worry because those things can be corrected and they're not dangerous unless there's a danger to your child. But your healthcare professional should be able to give you more information as far as that. Okay. Now, as far as motor skills and skill development, make sure that your child gets proper nutrition, vitamins, all that. Okay, because that's very vital for their development. And you can always get them involved in like some kind of playtime. If I know like libraries, they have like playtime for kids. You can get them involved in that. Like at community centers, they usually have like all kinds of kids activities. All you have to do is look in, online at your community center webpage, if that exists. And that should be able to give you a lot of information because I know that's what a lot of the activities my kids and I do is because of that. Okay. So I hope I have answered most of your questions. Like I said, I can't really touch on the medical stuff because I am not a licensed physician. I am a radiology professional, and that is my scope of practice. Okay. So I can honestly tell you that it is a lot of trial and error. Parenting is not perfect and you will make a lot of mistakes on the way. But you know what? It's okay because that's how you learn through trial and error. And you learn what's best for your child and you learn what works and what doesn't. I can give you what has worked and my recommendations and my opinions. However, you have to test it out and you have to figure out if it works for your child. Okay. So that is the listener email I have for this week. And I love listener emails. So I hope to do another segment for listener emails. So if you have any questions, you have a story that you want to share, or anything at all, please do not hesitate to email me at email@thecoparentingmama.com. So everything will be linked in the show notes so that you can share your story. If you want to come on as a guest on the podcast, there is a link to a form that you can fill out. I will get back to you in 72 hours. And let's come on the podcast and let's have an awesome conversation. like we were two old friends just sitting there having a conversation. All right. So thank you so much for you, the listener who sent in this email. I really appreciate it. I hope I answered all your questions. Thank you to everybody who listened to this episode. I really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, because I continue to do this because I love it and am going to bring you some more just engaging and more inspirational content on this podcast. So thank you so much for listening, and I will chat with you next week.